Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. How are you doing today? You can tell by my background that I'm back home. I was out of town all week and I was staying at a friend's place and I got back yesterday. So I had to drive about 6 hours to come back home. Anyways, back home and I'm really glad that I am. So, first of all, happy International Women's Day. Whether you're a woman or a man, you've had a woman in your life that has had an impact on you. And I want to talk a little bit about that today. Good morning. How are you today? Good morning. Nice of you to join me. So I want to talk a little bit about the impact that women have had in our lives. And I'll talk about the women in my life. And I haven't prepared anything, so I'm just going from the top of my head. I remember, as a little girl, I had a lot of women teachers. Most of them actually were women. And some of them, one of them was a nun who was very strict but liked me a lot. And the other ones were all, I don't know how to say, typical teachers who treated every child the same way as much as possible. But I do remember that some of them were nicer than others, and they all were very, very polite and very respectful. I don't really remember being influenced by them more than another. But I lived with my grandparents. When I was a kid, my parents got divorced. I lived, of course, first with my mom, but then I moved with my grandmother. And I stayed with my grandmother for many years. So I want to talk a little bit about the influence that my grandmother had on me. She cared for me. She was a mother role. She introduced me to knitting, to sewing, and it's because of my grandmother really that I learned how to knit, that I learned how to sew, because my mother did not show me that at all. And in fact, I remember trying to teach my mother how to knit years ago when I was a kid, and she just didn't get it. She just didn't get it. Either she didn't have the patience for it or she just didn't want to learn it. And that made me think, well, at that time I was thinking something completely different. I'm thinking, how can you not know how to knit? But then after that I started thinking that not every woman has the same interests, right? Not every woman teacher is the same, not every woman has the same interests. And I think that's part of um, that's part of the evolution of women in general. We, as a woman, we've learned to become and trust that we're on the right path. We've learned that hasn't always been easy. When I look back at the 1960s with, the revolution, women were standing out and it was about, I want to be my own woman, hear me roar. But even before that, women always tried to find their place. And I think now, I don't know if we're struggling as much now to find our place, but I do know, and this is what I want to mostly talk about, I do know that we as women can influence other women, other girls, and boys, of course, too. We can influence them by being who we are, by being authentic, by speaking our truth. And I'm just thinking of my kids here right now. They grew up with a single parent. I was a single parent, and now they tell me that, well, my younger one, because I spent time with him on during the week, you're the strongest woman I've ever met. And I'm thinking, I'm not strong, right? I'm not strong. But somehow my son interprets what I do, what I say as being a strong woman. And I'm thinking, well, thank you. And I know that out there, maybe you are a strong woman. And maybe you don't see yourself as a strong woman. I don't know. I don't know, but maybe you do know that you're a strong woman and that you're a confident woman and that other people see you that way too. So no matter what you think about you, other people may view you completely different, which is kind of good in a sense, right? Because if you don't think uh, that you're confident. Maybe you don't think that you're strong. Somebody else will see you that way, which suggests that we have an impact. We impact people around us, no matter what. So if we are, if we persevere and we are apt to get back on our feet and try again, and if we're resourceful, other people will observe us and they'll see that that resourcefulness, that perseverance, that is strength to continue. And I think that's the beauty about it, right? So you know you have an impact on other people. Now, this could be a positive impact, or in some cases, it could be a negative impact. I just want to talk about the positive impact. Words that we choose will have an impact on others, will have an impact on us, will have an impact. And words that we think will have an impact on us and will have an impact on others as well. Because think about this, what we think will, we might even show in emotions and will show in behaviors, and then other people will observe that. So if we have negative thoughts, which come from, negative beliefs, our emotions might show that, and our behaviors and actions might show that too. So you want to be mindful of how you show up with people, right? What is your attitude? Because children are observing us, but not just children. Everyone observes us. Children, grandchildren, other women that were around were always taken in information without even really being aware of it. So, take role models, for example. And one of the role models that I have is Oprah. Now you're going to say, well, I love Oprah. I think she's exuberates power uh, in a good sense. I think that she is inspirational. I think that she has been authentic. I remember when she was trying to lose weight and saying how difficult it was, because it's true. It's not challenge. It's difficult to lose weight. So she's always, or seems to always have been, herself during, I don't know how many years that I watched her, and that to me is for me is a good role model. My mom, not so much, because she had her own issues. Now, even though my mom may not have been a good role model, there were parts of her personality that were absolutely worth incorporating into my life. For example, my mom loved dancing, and I love dancing, and I don't know if I got that from my mom or not, but I love dancing. So even though the women in our life may not have had a positive impact on us, there were elements of that person's personality that we could say that we loved. I loved the fact, for example, that my mom would laugh when things were funny. And she wouldn't laugh when things weren't funny, but when things were funny, she would laugh. And when things were going right for her, she would always have a little sign that was like this: things are going great. She would always have that little sign. And I'll remember that because for her it was, I'm I'm so happy. I'm content. Everything is perfect. So, what I want to say is that the women in our lives may have had a positive impact, or maybe not. Maybe not. Like in the case of my mom, there were many things that I did not appreciate at all. But when I take a look back, who am I to judge? To be honest with you, there were times in my life that I saw myself doing things that my mother had done. And I didn't feel very good about it at all, actually. Now, am I to blame my mother for that? No, not at all. Our mothers grew up in a completely different era, completely different generation. And my mother went through her challenges and dealt with her challenges the best way that she knew how. at the time, right? And I can say that for myself too. I wasn't always a good mother. I wasn't always a good role model, but I did the best that I could with what I knew, at that time. So we may have had a person in our life that has affected us in a negative way, but that doesn't mean that they were bad. They weren't bad. They were living their life the best way they knew how, and they still had an impact on us. So, in order for us to celebrate Women's Day, International Women's Day, I really think that we need to take a look at what we learned from other women, what we learned from every woman that we've been surrounded with or around. I have a lot of women in my life, my good friends. I stayed at my friend's place last week, and I visited one lady friend, one really good friend from high school, and I've learned a lot from her. I've learned that in times of difficult moments, that prayer really helps. That it really, really helps, and it seems that I do that too. So somehow I've learned, and it wasn't from my dad. It wasn't from my dad. My dad now prays a lot more than he did, when he was a young father. But I learned that, from my grandmother. I learned that from other women that were in my life. So take a look at the women that you have in your life and take a look at what you've learned from these women that have made you the person that you are. And I'm just going to stop here for a second because I know somebody's watching me on our great Facebook group. What have you learned from your mother? Can you type down a few things that you've learned from your mother? And some people will say, well, I learned cooking from my mother. I didn't learn cooking from my mother. But some people have learned cooking. But it goes much deeper than that, right? It becomes part of our character, the strengths that we've grown into in some cases. And if not our mothers, then other women, because in my case, my mother was not a good influence in my life. I stayed with my grandmother for many, many, many years. So my grandmother had a really good influence on my life. Now, my grandmother didn't read. My grandmother couldn't write. She was, illiterate. Uh, back in that day, she didn't have an opportunity at all to go to school. But I still learned from her the strength of waking up in the morning and working hard. And I learned, here's one thing just came to my mind. My grandmother would stretch things. What I mean by that is she would not, I think because she was born in the Depression era, and was not just born in the Depression area, but was raised in the Depression area where you really had to limit what you consume. So she didn't consume a lot. We call it, she would stretch the milk, she would stretch the food. And I think I learned that from her because I do that too. So there might be habits that we've learned from role models that we've had in our lives. Maybe we've learned certain sayings from role models that we've had in our life, and we can, maybe laugh about those things now too. So we've all been influenced in one way or another. So because we know we've been influenced, know too that your children, your granddaughters, your grandsons are watching everything you do, watching everything you say, and they watch not just the face, but they watch your behaviors, and they're learning to become gradually little adults. So would be really interesting to know what they see in you. They probably see somebody who's absolutely wonderful and strong and confident and so on. And you have to believe that. If you don't believe that, then perhaps you need to listen to what your children are saying, because your children, your grandchildren, love you no matter what. So we know we have an impact on our children. It may not be what we think it is, but it's definitely something that's very interesting, especially as you get older. You might realize the impact when you get into conversations with your children, and when you get into conversations with your grandchildren, you'll find out that unconditional love, right? Unconditional love. And like I said, with my sons, especially the younger one, because I spent time with him this week, the strength that he sees in me, and I think the fact that he tells me that makes me feel like that I'm on the right track, that I'm doing the best that I can, because he sees something in me that sometimes I don't see at all. That I even wonder, what are you talking about? What are you talking about, strength? But they see that. So we influence not just our daughters and granddaughters, but we influence our sons and grandsons as well. And women all over the world, all over the world. This is Women's International Day. We all share very common things. And I'm wondering if you could type down a few things that you think we share. We all share a sense of responsibility for our family. I think that's innate. We all want to take care of our family. When when our children are sick, we want to take care of them. When they are suffering in one way or another, we hurt, we feel the pain that they're experiencing, and we don't like that. We all, as women, experience that. Men aren't the same way in that way, and we all want to be valued as women. We all want to be appreciated as women. We all want to be respected as women. And because we're so different, right? I'm thinking of women that I've met through from Korea, not in person, but virtually like this, from Korea and from Mexico and from Turkey. We all want to look good. That's another thing too. We all want to look good. We all want to feel good. We all have the same types of feelings, even though we're all so different, right? We're all still influenced by our culture. Deep down, we are all the same. So we can't be judging anybody, another woman at all. In fact, I remember years ago judging women. I remember thinking, how can you do that? How can you do this? How can you do that? And now, this is, of course, many, many, many years ago, but now I think, how could I have judged that person? Because I have walked so many different paths now. I have been, personally, I'm just thinking, unemployed. I have been um, I want to say homeless, meaning I didn't have an apartment. I had to stay at my dad's. I have been broke, so broke that, I didn't have any money for bills, and I didn't have any money for food, and like really, really, really broke. I have been hurt, by men and by women too. We've all experienced, I've had issues with bad habits, with addictions. So we've all experienced things that other women have. And so why would we judge each other? Why not just listen to one another and find out what they're all about? Find out what their stories are and really listen, because you'll find out that there are a lot of commonalities, especially when we talk about how we feel. I felt shame, or I felt guilty, or I felt love, or I needed validation. Those kind of feelings are all the same when we listen to them. You'll see that other women have felt the same way you have felt. So we share that commonality. Yet our path to learn all those lessons or to feel all those feelings have been, of course, so different, so different. And I think we're so interesting when we spend time to listen to another woman's story. It's like, thank you for sharing that with me. Thank you for sharing that with me, because now I understand. Now I understand. So if you have an opportunity to listen to another woman's story, Just listen. Because whatever that woman is telling you is part of her vécu, like we say in French, her part of her life, part of her journey to become exactly who she was meant to be, in this very, very moment. And along the way, she would have also have met other people who influenced her, who had an impact on her life. We all have significant moments in our lives, and those significant moments sometimes cause us to shift and take a slightly different direction, all to make us become who we are today. And along that way, there's one story I want to share about a woman that I did meet. This was years ago. I was living in Kirkland Lake at the time. This is 2006. I think it was 6 or 5. I can't remember now, but a long time ago. I was driving on the main road in the Kirkland Lake area, coming back from Larder Lake, I think, and I saw an older woman on the side of the road. There was nothing around there, nothing except bush. And I saw her on the side of the road with some bags, and I stopped my car and I asked her if she wanted a ride. So she did. She came in my car, and to be honest, I thought she was a homeless woman or bag lady. I really did because she had a lot of bags on her. But we got into a conversation. We had about maybe 15 minutes to go to by the time we got to where we needed to go. And I just listened to her and she gave me some really sound advice. It was it was really interesting to hear. The advice was just be friends. We were talking about men, of course, we were talking about men. And I was saying about this one guy that I liked, blah blah blah. Anyways, not going to get into it now, but she said, just be friends with them. Just start being their friends. And I had heard that before, but I didn't really get it. I didn't really let that sink in, except when I talked to this lady, this old lady. And next thing you know, I drop her off, and it was like weird because I wondered, was she really in my car? It was one of those moments that I'll never forget it, but I'll never relive that particular moment with that particular woman. And the thing that we shared, there was a moment there that we shared that was, in a sense, magical. So there are women that we'll meet in our lives that will give us certain messages, and we may not know what that message is all about, but down the road we'll know that's what she meant by that. That's exactly what she meant by that because now I know. I don't know if you've ever experienced that before, where you start thinking of some of the conversations you've had with really amazing women, and now you understand where they're coming from or what they meant by that. So, I no judgment, no judgment on anybody, any woman that has gone through all sorts of different challenges. When we spend time listening to them, first of all, it does validate, right? It validates their presence, it validates their experience, but it's more about respecting. It's more about just respecting, respecting our daughters, respecting our sisters, because in fact, I don't have any biological sisters, but I have friends that call me sisters. I have quite a few friends that call me their sister, and it feels really kind of really, really good. And so, as sisters, there's that love. No, I don't think so, Superior Seven. I don't think so. I don't think it's a healthy thing to judge anyone. I think what we could do is we listen, right? We listen. And sometimes when people say things to us, it it might not sit well with us and we might not bother paying attention to it. But no, I think we shouldn't judge anyone. We are all so different. Every one of us, we're also so different. So what I meant was we should not judge other women. And we're talking about International Women's Day today. That's why on Mindset Monday, I thought I'd talk about International Women's Day. And so we've met a lot of different women where we might think that they're, and I don't want to use obscene names here, but we might think that they're being inappropriate or that um, they're making really poor decisions. And that's our opinion. That's just our opinion. That might not be the truth for them because we all go through many different challenges in our lives. And maybe those types of decisions are the best decisions they can make at the time. Right? We make decisions all the time. And sometimes we learned later that maybe it wasn't the best decision. But even going through that part of the journey, um, we learned finally that that decision wasn't the best decision, and we make changes. We just make changes. That's all. So that's all I want to say for that today. Thank you for watching me. I appreciate you being here, and that I hope that you know that you are valued. You are valued. You are loved. People might not tell you that, but you are more loved than probably what you realize. I think, unfortunately, we don't tell each other we love each other very often. We might not have a lot of opportunities now to do that, but it starts with us, right? It has to start with us. So we need to know that we need to love ourselves first, and also that we are loved by other women, that we are loved by other people, and we do have an impact. We do have. I don't want to say we do have an impact. We do. Um, Impact others. No matter what, we will impact others. So why not make it positive impact, right? So why not be mindful of the words that we use and mindful of the behaviors that we take on, that we do, because we know that other people, our children and our grandchildren, they're paying attention, and we can have a positive impact on their lives. So happy International Women's Day. I hope that you have a great one. And celebrate. If you're by yourself, celebrate it anyways. Celebrate it anyways. And have yourself a great day. Bye now. Talk to you soon. Bye.